Hi, 6th grade. We are in week 2 of our Research a Place writing project, and this is the last video for the project on doing your revising, proofreading, and editing, and then finally your publishing. Typically, all of these words don't come up a lot in class because I tend to do this stuff for you when you give me your papers. But it's also something that we've been working on you doing as you have worked your way through a rough draft and turned it in, where I have had you take time to do some things to check and make sure that it's a quality rough draft. Not a final draft, but a quality rough draft. Something that you've actually spent time to make sure is the best that you can give. So this just means change. Look at it again. Revision. That's what revision is re-looking at something. Think about vision with your eyes. Okay? Doing it again. Looking at it again. Thinking about things in a different way. Proofreading is looking for mistakes that you need to correct, and editing is correcting those mistakes. And then when you're done, you do your final draft, which is publish. Okay, if it's typed, that's going to make your job a lot easier. Those are things we've talked about this year. So if you wrote your paragraphs and typed them as you went through this week, then you already have a typed rough draft to make this a little bit easier. So your job now is to read what you wrote, okay? And I would normally put in here to check for the format, except for you should have the format. So here's my written on outline page. This has your format. This is a paragraph. It starts with a hook. It talks about the place. It names the event, and it talks about what it's like today in a clincher or thesis. The historical event 1 paragraph. It's another paragraph. It starts with a topic sentence. It has detail sentences, and it has a clincher. If you use this, then you will have no problem having the format of your paper correct. So please do that because it saves you from this step. Hopefully you have done that. But anytime you're given an outline, use that outline to make sure you should have all of those things on the outline in your paper, unless things are optional or whatever. Like here, I said you had to have 3 details at least, 3 sentences with details. Okay? These are sentences, detail sentences. So, I'm not worried about the format. That should be good if you followed your outline. Okay, you're going to check for obvious mistakes. Maybe you misspelled a word that you know how to spell, and you could fix it. Because you were just going quickly. Maybe you used the wrong there, or there. Something like that. So fix those things. Repeated words, missing words. That happens a lot. Where we might be getting distracted, and so we write a word twice. I do that a lot. When I write, I'll write the same phrase 2 times because I'm not paying attention. Check for anything that seems a little bit boring or repetitive. Okay, so if you have 2 sentences in a row that sound the same, that's kind of boring. We don't want that. Check for I statements. Okay, this is a report. It's not a personal narrative. So I don't want to know what you think. I don't want to know what you researched. I don't want to know those things in that way. I studied Gettysburg. I wrote this report on Gettysburg. I hope you like this report. I think the Battle of Gettysburg was important. None of those statements are allowed, okay? So these are a no-no. A no-no. It's not a personal narrative or a story told in first person. Those are places where you should see I written, or a diary. But this is not that. This is a report. This is for somebody to get facts from, not somebody's opinion, okay? So check for I statements, and then check for sentence completion. Capitals, commas, periods. There's a lot of struggle in complete sentences. It's a typical thing for your age group. But I just watched Hattie edit some paragraphs that she was given last week or the week before, where she had to read through and find mistakes with sentence completion. That's all she was looking for, were places to add periods and then capital letters to the next word, because it was a new sentence. So you are fully capable. You just have to stop and think about each sentence by itself. A lot of times we can write a complete sentence, but when we put them all together in a paragraph, it'll get all jumbled up. So think about each sentence individually. And then read it again. After you've done fixing and, all of these things, read it again. If you're typing your corrections on the computer, read it again, because you'll probably forget to delete something that you meant to delete or something like that. So take the time to read what you've written. Okay? And then when you have all of that done, and you can have an adult help you with some of it, like after you have spent a chunk of time, you can have an adult help you and look for things that you maybe can't check for yourself. Like I didn't put spelling on here. Spelling is important, and I want you to check for spelling, but that might be something that you need to have like an adult or older sibling check for. Or if you have typed your document, you could use spell check. Spell check won't catch everything because it doesn't get the context of what you're writing all the time, so it might not catch it. However, those are both ways that you can get help on your spelling. Because obviously if you don't know how to spell a word, you might not know that you're spelling it wrong, or you might not have any other way of spelling it that you can think of. So just ask. And get some help on those. So your final draft will be this final version, this published version, where you have done these things and you've had some help with your spelling and things. And that's the draft that I want. If you can't find anybody to help you with your editing, or people are busy, which happens, that's perfectly fine. I know people are starting to go back to work and do those things. So you can send it to me and I can check for those things also. If you've chosen to type, that's great for next year. I urge you to type. I'm not going to use the word require because we're not at school, and I don't know if that's perfectly fair for me to do at this point. However, I strongly suggest that you type it to get that practice if you can. So then you would just make your corrections on your final document, which is nice. Okay. So I'm going to go through a paragraph and talk about these things. Now, my list up here, other than reading it at the beginning and reading it at the end, these don't have to be done in any particular order. Some of you will be able to do all of them at once. Some of you will need to go through and do each one separately. That's perfectly fine. So I'm not going to follow this exactly when I go through. I will probably pick up things as I go through that I need to fix, because that's more how my mind works, to go through it in order, not necessarily in this order. But for some of you, this might be super helpful to have steps to follow. Okay. The Battle of Gettysburg happened there. Oh, and that's, this is my event number 1 paragraph. The Battle of Gettysburg paragraph. The Battle of Gettysburg happened there. It was in July of 1863. It was during the Civil War. General Robert E. Lee commanded the Southern troops. General George Gordon Meade commanded the Northern troops. They fought for 3 days, and Pickett's charge ended the battle, and Pickett led about 15,000 men over Cemetery Ridge. The North drove them back, and they won. Over 45,000 men from both sides were either killed, wounded, or captured. I think the Battle of Gettysburg was an important battle of the Civil War and America's fight for freedom for slaves. It's not horrible by any means, but hopefully you caught a couple things as I was reading. So let's go through that. And I'm just going to go through kind of sentence by sentence because I've read it all, and I feel like everything was in a pretty good order. It went from kind of beginning to end and whatever. So let's look at each sentence here. The Battle of Gettysburg happened there. First off, we're going to capitalize that because in my research it was always capitalized. Okay? And that would be like, this may be something you would maybe consider a typo, that you just missed capitalizing a word that you knew needed to be capitalized. Okay. The Battle of Gettysburg happened there. That's kind of boring. So let's say the Battle of Gettysburg is one of the major events that can be studied at the National Park. I don't have to say that we're in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania again, or any of those things, because it's the Battle of Gettysburg. But a little bit more information to not just say there. Alright? So the Battle of Gettysburg is one of the major events that can be studied at the National Park. And I said is here because I'm talking about how it is an event that can be studied, which can happen now. So that might be, there might be times where you might use is or was, depending on how you're phrasing your sentence. I chose is here because I'm saying that it is an event that you can study. But you could say the Battle of Gettysburg was a major event that occurred at the park. That would work too. Okay? So now I have my topic sentence. It's better than it was before. It was in July of 1863. It was during the Civil War. General Robert E. Lee commanded the Southern troops. So this first sentence here, it was in July of 1863, and it was during the Civil War. Those sound exactly the same. That's that repetitive thing that we talked about, and that's kind of boring. So, also, if I look at this sentence, it was during the Civil War General Robert E. Lee commanded the Southern troops. That's a run-on sentence. Okay? So, I need to stop that there at least, so that this next sentence starts on its own. General Robert E. Lee commanded the Southern troops. That's a complete sentence. Okay? So, it was in July of 1863, and I'm going to change this and put a comma and say and was during the Civil War. But you could also say and took place instead of saying was. Took place is a more interesting verb than was, and it means that I don't repeat my verbs. Okay, this is a compound sentence. It was in July of 1863, comma, and it took place during the Civil War. That would make it a compound sentence. Or I could say it was in July of 1863 and have no commas and say and. It was in July of 1863 and took place during the Civil War. That works too, because that just means I have two verbs and I don't have another subject in there, okay, by taking that out. So those are two options. General Robert E. Lee commanded the Southern troops. General George Gordon Meade commanded the Northern troops. Those are identical sentences. Okay? We don't want that. So there's a couple things you could do. You could take the second sentence and rewrite it and say, the Northern troops were led by General George Gordon Meade. For the sake of time and writing, I am going to combine these sentences. General Robert E. Lee commanded the Southern troops, and then I'm going to replace this period with a subordinating conjunction that we've learned about in the past, while General George Gordon Meade, and instead of using that same commanded, I'm going to say led the Northern troops. Okay? They fought for 3 days, and Pickett's charge ended the battle, and Pickett led about 15,000 men over Cemetery Ridge. Hopefully, we can pick up in that sentence that there are actually 3 sentences in that sentence. They fought for 3 days, Pickett's charge ended the battle, and Pickett led about 15,000 men over Cemetery Ridge. I have 3 sentences. They fought, Pickett's charge ended, and Pickett led. 3 separate sentences, 3 separate independent clauses, but I've combined them with 2 ands, which is not okay. So I am going to get rid of this and put a period there. They fought for 3 days. Pickett's charge ended the battle. And I'm going to replace this with, let's say, when Pickett's charge ended the battle when he led about 15,000 men over Cemetery Ridge. Or, this might even be better, instead of saying when he, because Pickett is a new name here. I might not know who Pickett is. So, when so Pickett's charge ended the battle when Pickett, another Southern general, comma, this is an A positive. Okay, we've studied those before. It's another way of naming the noun. Okay, so Pickett's charge ended the battle when Pickett, comma, another Southern general, comma, led about 15,000 men over Cemetery Ridge. So I fixed this big mess of 3 separate sentences that were all combined into one sentence, and now I have 2 sentences where these 2 are combined appropriately. Okay? The North drove them back and they won. That one has a minor problem. I have the North drove, so I have a subject and a predicate, and I have they won, another subject and predicate. I can't combine 2 sentences, a subject and predicate with just an and. Okay? I have to have a comma here to make it a compound sentence. Or you take away the subject, they. The North drove them back and won. That would work. The North drove them back and won. Or the North drove them back, comma, and they won. Over 45,000 men from both sides were either killed, wounded, or captured. I want to add a word here because I say the North drove them back and they won. Over 45,000 men from both sides were either killed, wounded, or captured. You know, a lot of times when we're talking about somebody winning, we think about the good things that happen when you win. But winning in war, there's always losing. There's always loss on both sides because it's war. So I would change and make this a lowercase o, and I'm going to add in the word here, however, over 45,000 men from both sides were either killed, wounded, or captured. And then my last sentence, I think the Battle of Gettysburg was an important battle of the Civil War and America's fight for freedom for slaves. This one's easy to fix, but it breaks a rule of report writing. I think. Nobody cares what I think because it's a report. But the Battle of Gettysburg was an important battle of the Civil War and America's fight for freedom for slaves. That's fine. So I just capitalize my the and get rid of the I think. Sometimes an I think sentence has to be completely rewritten. But this one I changed that way. So this is an example of how you would go through a paragraph and check for those things. Notice I fixed a lot of things. That's okay. That's the point of fixing it, is find things that need to be written better and write them better. Find things that are mistakes and fix the mistakes. Okay? All right. Well, Sorry the video was kind of long, but I felt like we went over some things that I would have spent even more time going over in class. We probably would have edited a whole paper together in class to get used to that pattern. So, good luck. Let me know if you need any help. I love and miss you guys.